Welcome, Krystal Dunham, to the Dish with Dina podcast. I'm so excited to finally be able to interview you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dina. It's a pleasure to finally meet you and chat with you over the last few years. It's nice to connect.
I know you're one of those people that I started out following, I think, when I was getting involved in the dietetics profession. And, spoiler alert, you are also a dietitian. So we'll talk a little bit more about all of the things that you've been accomplishing and working on. But let's start off first with a little quick detail as to who you are, where you're at, and where you're currently working out of.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Krystal Dunham, as Dina mentioned. I'm based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I run a private practice called the Mother Road Dietitian, where we focus on health for people from all body sizes and types and diversity. Mostly work with people dealing with eating disorders, particularly binge eating disorders, and also diabetes, because I'm just really noticing a trend and a bi-directional relationship between binge eating and diabetes.
Oh, that's fascinating. I definitely want to learn a little bit more about that too. Will you go back in time a little bit? Where did this all begin for you when it came to this particular profession? Did you know what a dietitian is or that you wanted to be one from an earlier age, or was it something you learned about as a little bit more recently?
Yeah, all the fun stuff. So I don't think I knew what I wanted to be for a very long time, hence that I went back to school twice. So I've always had a fascination with food. My grandfather was always sharing recipes and always had myself and my brothers in the kitchen cooking with him whenever he came to visit. And so I have always been fascinated with food. I'm really proud. I've only started two businesses in my life. So my first one, I actually started little cottage business where I made cupcakes. And after the first few months, I realized I don't think my love for food translates to me wanting to make a bunch of food for people. And so kind of counted that out. And then I learned about being a dietitian or a registered dietitian from my best friend's grandmother, who I think she was in the very first class at Stanford back in the 30s. So it's really crazy. And so just like learning from her about being a dietitian and how she used to mix baby formulas together by hand and be on call, I looked for a program, found one in Oklahoma, and decided to go back to school to become a dietitian.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. I have some things in common with you. I also had a grandparent. We used to live in a two-family upstairs and downstairs from each other. And she would bring me in to make homemade pasta. And anytime she was doing, something like Christmas cookies or something like that, she'd always expose me to the kitchen things. And I was so, so fortunate to be able to get a lot of hands-on experience. And flashing forward to, I've talked about this in some past episodes also. So, Krystal, I don't know if it's the same with you or not. As we've handed down recipes, they were all written by hand on smudgy pieces of paper. And a lot of the instructions were like, add water until wet. Or like a smidge of this. I'm like, what exactly is a standardized recipe, including for a smidge? So you cook with love a lot of times in these scenarios, don't you?
Yes, and it's so I love that you mentioned that because both of my grandfathers has since passed, and I can remember vividly being in the kitchen with him, and we were doing fried catfish. He was originally from Paris, Texas, but built a home in St. Louis and would fish a lot and fish for a lot of catfish. And I remember one time we were preparing fried catfish, and he was making the batter for it, and I was helping, and he was adding buttermilk. And I kept asking how much. He's like, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Okay, good. How do you know there's no like written or verbal recipe for that? I know we'll probably talk about this later, but I served in the Peace Corps, and I even noticed a lot of those like oral recipes whenever I lived overseas. I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. It really kind of connects all those circles together for me.
Right, there's something so endearing about that. Just being able, also just to see my grandmother's handwriting on a smudgy piece of paper, and it brings back all those memories, and then being able to put my own spin on things because we've come across a lot of more convenient types of equipment that we don't have to do things by hand. But sometimes it's really nice to take time and put our efforts into that because I feel like it connects us so much more with the
Yeah.
food that we're making. I love that. Krystal, share with us a little bit about a typical, or maybe I would say a current week in the life of you. There are a lot of things that I know that you juggle. You also run a private practice, and you were talking to before about kind of seeing that connection between some disordered eating patterns and also chronic conditions like diabetes. So walk us through a little bit about what that means for you when you're in patient sessions or as you're working on or in your business as well.
Kind of the bread and butter of the Mother Road Dietitian is one-on-one patient care. We're really fortunate that we are insurance based, so the majority of our patients do utilize insurance to work with us. I just hired two dietitians this fall, and so they're about to take off and have their own patients here in the next few months. So that's really great, the growth that we've had in our business. Outside of some of the one-on-one patient care, I mean, I always have my hands in a lot of pots. What's a dietitian without a bunch of food puns? But I just finished my presidency for the Oklahoma Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. So I'm serving as past president this year. So still supporting our incoming president-elect and also other volunteer committees and projects that entails. Some other things that I really enjoy doing in my practice is that I get some opportunities to do speaking engagements, whether it's in the community with clients, potential clients, community members, and constituents. I also get the opportunity to speak at different state affiliates on issues or topics regarding like food trends and consumer behavior. Some more of my more passionate subject matters that I speak on include like binge eating and diabetes, health equity, especially health equity when it comes to Black and Brown individuals in nutrition. And I mean, I think that's what keeps me busy most days.
I would say we're never at a loss for things to do in this profession. I want to focus first on some of the business aspects of what you're doing. And I'm also talking about the thread that runs through even the academic journey into career setting. So if you knew then what you know now, what are some things that you can share for the nutrition students, the dietetic interns, the newly credentialed dietitians? When it comes to things to look out for, whether it's through academics, whether it's through marketing and networking or productivity, how you keep things afloat, any tidbits of info that you could have given your past self as far as advice is concerned?
Yeah, there's a few things that come to mind off my head. So first and foremost, having a nutrition education does not mean you're going to heal and fix your entire family. I wish I knew that sooner. It wasn't until I really got into, again, another food pun, the meats and bones of dietetics that I realized so many complexities to a person's health, and it's not always just the choice that they put on their plate. There's a lot of other barriers or other bigger decisions and policy and procedures that go into why someone chooses a food. Because I think we all go into dietetics, or a lot of us go into dietetics because of our fascination with nutrition and how it impacts maybe us as an individual, but also our family members and our loved ones. So I wish that was something I knew early on, that I wasn't going to heal and fix my entire family. When it comes to business, especially, this is my fourth year in business, in my private practice. One of the things I wish I accepted earlier was that delegation helps you become a better leader, and delegating early as opposed to when you're buried behind work and stress and a lot of commitments. And there's no harm in delegating. I think it shows a real strength in a leader that you're willing to trust somebody that knows or may know how to do something better than you or more efficient than you can.
I think these are great words of wisdom. And I also will just, I'll put a nod to the fact that even in our academic journey, we're learning a lot of textbooks. I know I teach as well. So I teach undergraduate and graduate nutrition studies. And a lot of our curriculum has changed and evolved over the past few years. They are integrating more things like how to develop your resume, how to market yourself. So we're really trying to take it outside of just the knowledge around nutrition and dietetics and the approaches and the medical nutrition therapy related to that, and also help strengthen and gain for our students to gain more confidence if they do want to go out, not just to pursue private practice, but also get a job, like, how to pitch themselves, how to really look at their strengths and their areas of improvement, and designing a little bit more, I think, of a path towards that, because you don't usually get that, right? You usually have to take like workshop classes or do something else outside of that. And I think what you mentioned too about the family connection of the things that we feel a little bit more personal. So I usually scribble notes every time I'm speaking to a guest. And the two things that came out for me was the comment around nuance. So a nuanced approach regarding who we're working with, whether it's somebody we personally know or one of our own patients. And also, we've talked a lot about this on this podcast before about the social determinants of health and healthism. So where the end result isn't always the responsibility of the individual. And so I think I'd like to have you switch a little bit and speak about that too. When it comes to patient advocacy, what are some things that either you're recognizing in your own current community population, patients that you're working with, and how might you also provide them with some guidance to advocate and empower themselves when they're looking for a dietitian or when they're working with a healthcare practitioner in general?
Oh my gosh, Dina, that's such a fabulous question. I live in Oklahoma, which some might even refer to as the buckle of the Bible Belt. So not only do I have clients that live in rural areas and deal with the policies of Oklahoma, but oftentimes there's a large religious aspect to it. And I honor my clients who choose to believe in their faith. I've noticed a lot of trends recently, and I don't know what this is about, but I do notice a lot of trends where overarching belief that if their faith was better, their health would also be better. And sometimes that has made a few of my clients maybe resistant to some like modern innovations like medications that can be really helpful. And so I think to answer your question, how do I approach that? I'm just very gentle with my clients. Like, I do have to maybe offer like that really stern like motivation at times, but just really understanding like where those motivations lie and letting them know like, I don't know, maybe the God that I believe doesn't make us sick because of X, Y, and Z, or because you've done this or not done that. And I also think there are areas and different interventions that help us find health for our long game goals, but also there's things we can do for our short game goals. So how I kind of even like share that with the client is like, hey, I'm so glad you're showing up for sessions. You've made so much progress. So much about nutrition and the things that we work on are long game goals. And maybe if your A1C is staying elevated, or maybe if your cholesterol is staying elevated, maybe a medical intervention might be the best solution for a short game goal for right now until we can get everything on together on the same page. So I don't know if that truly answers your question, but it's again like patients and clients are so nuanced, and it would be easy if we could just, hey, copy this from our textbook and share this with our patient, and it all worked out perfectly fine. But the truth is, our clients are overworked and underpaid. They have a lot of family members sometimes. Sometimes they have multiple generations under one roof. Sometimes the foods that I have in my house are not foods that they have in their house. Maybe they have family members or themselves are dealing with like mental health issues. Being cut, some of our federal and state fundings are being cut, so that can impact what foods that our clients might have access to. So really keeping that all in mind when I'm giving any type of recommendation to my patients.
Yeah, I think this speaks along the lines of what we've been taught and what we also, I think, learn as we go in private practice or otherwise, of meeting people where they're at. That's something that we say a lot too, and allowing them to share with us as well. So, like you said, kind of guiding the discussion, speaking to what their lived experience is, and allowing them to play a role in that relationship versus having them come to us, whether it's through referral or finding us online or however they get their appointment together, and then they come to us and maybe think, we're the quote unquote food police. And we're like, no, no, no. Right. It's not a one size fits all approach, as we also like to say, and really having them be that partner in it. So Krystal, will you speak a little bit too about this as well? You mentioned insurance based. Is it mostly referrals? Are people also able to come see you and find you on their own? Because eventually what I want to talk about is that interdisciplinary team. So whether it's diabetes or disordered eating patterns, and you're working with either a mental health professional and a clinical professional as well, whether it be a cardiologist, endocrinologist, what roles do those play? What role do you play within that too? How much of that interaction is also embedded in those sessions that you provide with a quick little caveat of and I've shared this before in the podcast, understanding that not every insurance company will allow for unlimited sessions, so you might be limited in some of the time that you're spending with your patients too. So the challenge and success is there.
Yeah, there is a lot of challenge with the rules that are made up by individual plans and how many sessions a client might be able to see you for based on, yeah, medical necessity or whatever the insurance company outlines. So, kind of a combination for how people find the Mother Road Dietitian. I have referrals from providers. So, doctors or not PAs, NPs. I'm like nurse practitioners. Will maybe refer a patient our direction based on some qualifying factors for our practice, whether it's a prediabetes or elevated blood sugar diagnosis, high cholesterol, diabetes, really anything. I also have patients or clients that will seek us out. Maybe they have a new diagnosis and just go through their insurance directory and find us. Or maybe someone's been scrolling late night on the computer and realized the solution is not another TikTok trend, but it's probably a dietitian. So they find us that way as well. Um, I've been very fortunate with insurance because I am in network with most of the major plans that I haven't had a bunch of pushback or denied claims. Like, not saying that doesn't sometimes happen, but insurance has been really great. And I don't know if that's based on where I'm based or what, but I've had a really more so positive experience with insurance.
That's good to know. I wanted to, as you were talking, I wrote down this word trends. Even when before you were discussing that common thread that seems to be happening around the cultural or religious aspect too. So, and you just mentioned TikTok. So let's just talk about it. What are you finding? And maybe this is something that not necessarily you want to debunk, but maybe you're happy to see. Like, are you noticing certain things that do feel like they're infiltrating, that people are coming to you with preconceived knowledge or maybe some misinformation, however you want to approach this question, or maybe a little bit of both? Like, what seems to be some of the hot topics right now that are either getting your go or you're excited to know that are happening?
It's kind of like that double-edged sword because I think that social media can play such a big role in building community. And like case in point, the last 5 years, like we met on social media, never met in person. I think social media can play such a huge role in connection. I think where the trouble can lie is that when it comes to maybe health and nutrition, I think it can get a little murky because a lot of times the information that can be shared or that is shared, it doesn't always sound wrong. It sometimes might have some truths woven into it, but then we end up in this gray, murky area. So some of the things I love again about social media is the community. Some of the things that I don't love about it is that I'll often have clients that saw something on TikTok and now want me to reach out to their provider to get labs for inflammation. It's just like, okay, well, are you experiencing anything that would make you think that there's inflammation? It's if you don't really have a science mind or that understanding or knowledge, you may not know that your body needs some levels of inflammation. You don't just get rid of all of it. So that maybe has been the most recent trend, the inflammation. TikTok is also great for recipes. Clients will find recipes on there all the time and share them with me. But I think that's my major qualm with TikTok social media is this inflammation aspect that just will never go away.
Yeah, we used to call this back in the day like the diagnosis of the decade. Like there was always like a key word that started, or a fear-mongering type of approach to like you have to look out for whatever. And then it just feels like this influx of everybody asking you the same question. You're like, no, 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 but it's not, or it is, but it's not really the same way that they're talking about it. And so again, having to clarify that, which in the end, still empowers and educates and informs our patients and our clients. So hopefully, I appreciate when they do trust us over some social media. And I also appreciate when they trust us in line with their other healthcare providers. A lot of times, some of the past things that I've been seeing were, well, my doctor said it and my dietitian says something else, and my doctor must be
Right.
more sure about what they're talking about. And I'm like, oh, but no, because we are the specialty practice. We know deeper diving in that. And while I love working in collaboration, I don't feel it to be uncomfortable to have conversations that are necessary around, I need clarification around that because they're telling you one thing and I'm telling you something else. And I don't want you as the patient to feel confused. So I'm okay with stepping outside and saying, like, let's make sure you heard that correctly and let's make sure that is accurate because sometimes it might not be.
Yeah, and I never want to feel, or I never want my patients to think that they have to choose a team between us. Like we all should be working together for the betterment of their health, whatever their health looks like. And so I do share with them because I hate feeling like that's not right, just combating everything that they say. But I often reflect and say, hey, like when your provider made that comment, how long did it take for them to come up with that like diagnosis or assessment or recommendation? Like, oh, I met them for 5 minutes and they told me this. I'm like, okay, well, we're getting to talk for an hour, and you gave me a food recall, and these are the recommendations I make. And I think doctors are great for a lot of things. Nutrition isn't always all of that, all of the things. I think it can be really natural, regardless of what type of specialty you are in, whether you are a doctor, endocrinologist, or a dietitian, even, that we can almost begin to create biases or even anchor our opinions based on one thing. To give an example, even like the eggs, right? Eggs were really good at one time and now they're and are really bad at one time and now they're good. But if you're not keeping up with that evidence, you might still be anchored on the eggs is bad from 15 or 20 years ago and never move forward from that.
Same thing with a lot of the low fat recommendations too, where it's like, let's converse about that and explain and clarify a little bit. So I appreciate that insight too, Krystal. I wanted to also find out from you since you mentioned some of the practice specialties that you have. So, eating disorders and disordered eating can be quite a sensitive conversation, as can some chronic conditions, depending on how managed or unmanaged they are. So when you're looking at it from a business standpoint, and this goes also back tying into maybe having some insight provided to our soon to be colleagues in our profession, the up and coming nutrition students, dietetic interns, what resources do you, and especially since you were past president of your chapter, so what resources do you feel are really important? Is it just attending webinars or workshops or really focusing on certifications or other things that might strengthen someone's specialty? Because we're obviously able to have a wide discussion, but some things require a little bit more finesse. So if you had to provide guidance of fine tuning someone's interest or specialty, what might be a few things that you would recommend as far as resources are concerned?
Yeah, that I love that question. So, um, like to just give a little bit of my experience and my background, I did not plan on working in eating disorders at all. I was terrified of them, and they are still very serious situations and conditions. But it just, the path led me there because I practice from a weight inclusive lens. And often, when you're working with eating disorder order recovery, we need to find a way to not focus just on weight because that's often how people get there. And so I think just by being in those circles and really, like you mentioned, webinars, really soaking in all the webinars, I was networking with current providers and new dietitians when I first graduated. So I think I just naturally ended it into this niche because of that. Some of the things that really helped me as I was building my expertise and my knowledge and skill in this role is continuing education. I had a little bit of money, but I was able to purchase a few courses to just understand more about eating disorders specifically. There's still a bunch of free resources out there and websites that are like a wealth of knowledge show that. As I begin to build my dietitian circle, even creating some mastermind groups with some like-minded dietitians has been really beneficial for me as well. And then reading. I mean, I maybe reading's a little bit of a lost art now, but sometimes it does take just checking out a book or purchasing a book to learn a bit more about a subject.
I appreciate that. So just to clarify for anyone who in the audience is listening to this too, when you have somebody who is credentialed, like we are in the dietetics profession, we are also required to maintain a scope of practice. And that requires, as of right now, 75 continuing education units every 5 years. But like you said, sometimes you can pay out of pocket and go to these, like we just wrapped up Fancy, which is our food and nutrition conference and expo. And that's kind of a high ticket item for a lot of people. And then you have a lot of, as I've done in the past, piece together all of the freebie things or low cost items. Like maybe I spent $19 on something and got a couple of extra credits towards my continuing education units there. And so, like you said, you can hit on a bunch of different things. You can choose both fee-based and free types of items. And the reading thing too, I mean, I sign up for every newsletter that is available, whether it's food action policy, allergies, etc., because you want to stay current with the language. You want to know who some of the key players are, like who's speaking at something, and then you can maybe follow them around and see what they're working on, and journal articles as well too, Krystal. So thanks for sharing that with us.
And even with the email subscription list, maybe our inboxes look pretty similar.
Yeah.
That's even sometimes how I keep up with trends because they are pretty like on top of what people are talking about right now.
Exactly. Like if I see fiber maxing one more time, or if I had a nickel for every time I saw fiber maxing, I think that might be a better option there. Krystal, walk us through what the future entails for you. Are you a forward planner? Are you, 2, 5, 10 year view? Like what do you think that is going to happen for Mother Road Dietitian and for yourself specifically?
Yeah, and I want to say this in the most hopeful way possible. And I joke around with my spouse all the time that since I decided to marry for love and not money, we'll be working for a little bit. And I've only been a dietitian for going on 5 years. So I still think there's a lot to be seen and learn and finding out things that I really love in this field and things that I may not. I think there's still a lot of time for that. Bringing on my dietitians, really getting them set and their client loads made, and then doing my speaking events throughout the year. I actually have a conference that I'm speaking at next month in Iowa in November. Have I ever been to Iowa in November? No. Is it probably going to be cold? Absolutely.
This is how we learn and grow. I love that it feels like you say yes to a lot of opportunities that feel in line to your mission so that you're on a path of some sort of growth, whatever that happens, it happens even if you don't necessarily have a specific plan and action, but just to allow to absorb and also get your name out there, right? That's a great thing too. I feel like a lot of times people are afraid to step out of their comfort zone, but you don't learn and you can't grow unless you do. And sometimes that's taking chances.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been really fortunate that my parents never made me feel or pigeonholed me to just do one thing or feel like I was only created to do one thing. And I think with that, one of my biggest regrets is like I went to one volleyball practice in high school and quit because it coincided with the soccer season and I love soccer. And so my mom will bring it up occasionally, like, hey, you could have done both. Like you didn't have to say no. And so I kind of have that in the back of my mind sometimes, like, I know like it's hard now, like I might be tired, and this is by no means saying like you'll sleep when you're dead or anything like that. But I just feel like some of my biggest regrets have been when I said no to an opportunity. And I just don't know. I don't know what will happen when I say yes. I've never been all that risk averse. And I mean, the worst thing by saying yes is like it just doesn't turn out or it's not a good fit. But now I know for next time.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Even if I've regretted a decision I made, at least I know I tried it. I tried my hand at it. It didn't work. It wasn't for me. And I was able to just be like, okay, you know what? I'll just
Yeah,
learn a
don't do
little
that
bit.
again.
Yeah, and you learn as you go. You learn as you go. I'm keeping my eye on the time, so I have a few questions left. One of my next questions is, since I like to also learn a little bit about people's personal side of things, because you are a business owner and a human, What is it that you're doing to keep everything in line? Like, what are some of your non-negotiables when it comes to your own self-care, your own healthy habits?
Maybe this would be a better question for like next month. However, one of the things I've noticed about myself as a business owner, and especially where there's this culture where your business is your brand and you're a brand that you are one and you cannot separate it, is that I have noticed that my business was becoming me and it wasn't me running my business. I am my business. And so in the last month, I have been very intentional about getting movement in. So whether it's stepping on my walking pad during the day, I haven't told it this many people, but I started playing pickleball at the rec center and the beginners with some of the retirees. So just ways to move my body again and ways that I enjoy soaking up some of this cooler fall weather, and that really helps me like get my sanity back and recharge and reset.
It also signifies boundary setting too, whether it's with yourself or with other people, and that you don't always have to be so actively involved doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking away anything that you deem serious. A lot of times people come from that, right, that limiting mindset, limiting belief approach where they're afraid to not answer a call, but you really do have to make sure that you're replenishing yourself, giving back to yourself. So
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah. I have a really funny story that I like to get my hair braided sometimes, and my braider moved this past year. However, they're coming back in town over the holiday, and they're gonna do a few appointments. So I messaged them yesterday and to try to get an appointment, and I guess she didn't have my number saved. And so I said, hey, if you're free on this day at this time, I'd love to get this style. And they literally messaged me back and said, well, that day's not available, but I need to know who this is. And I misread it, went a few more messages, and they just said, I need to know who this is. And I said who it was. She's like, all right, I got that time available for you. So I think we get so scared to set boundaries, but we're allowed to protect our mental peace and energy, our physical peace and energy, and make time for people that we know are going to be life giving and not life sucking.
Oh, I'm snapping all over the place for that because I feel we have sometimes obligations that we feel like we should be doing, or well, this person's been in my life, or I've been responsible for this XYZ. But if it really doesn't feel like a mutually beneficial relationship, it's okay to go back through an inventory, whether it's a person, place, or thing that is no longer serving us, and really be able to, again, invest in our own mental and physical health. I mean, because otherwise, what is there, right, Crystal?
Oh my gosh, there isn't anything. And I think sometimes we can get really scared and stuck in that scarcity mindset. If I say no, then nothing else will come. That is so untrue. I don't know why we tell ourselves those stories. Like things will come, the right things will come.
Mm. I have to say this all the time because it's true. When you write the whole, I'm going to do this image wise because if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, you'll see it, but I'll explain it. Right. When you have the clenched fist approach, when you're holding on for dear life to something that you feel is, even if it's not serving you, you're still holding on to it. But once you release that, right, and your palms are open and you're facing outwards, then other things can be placed into your hands. And so there are opportunities. And I also want to say too, because like I think this is, we might have a similar mindset. You still have to put action in place. Like you, yes, you can speak it into existence, etc., but you also want to make sure that you are taking the steps to move forward. So you can't just always be woe is me, nothing ever happens, and I don't know why this person is being so successful and I'm not. It's like, well, what efforts are you making towards that? Whether it's you're removing something from your life to invest in yourself or adding something to your plate because you want to be more successful through networking opportunities or job searches or whatever it is, like having that alignment too and balancing that out.
That is so true. I love that. I love that analogy and or that visual. I'm going to share that with my clients.
The open hands. I think about that all the time. Like, are you clenching your fists, Dina? Because no wonder why nothing's coming your way. Like, let it go, let it go. Crystal, as we're coming up on the end of our conversation, I have a couple of other questions for you. The first is there anything that we didn't cover? Like any final words of wisdom or any questions I didn't think to ask you that you think would be necessary in this conversation?
I think the thing that comes to mind as someone and a fellow person who has made becoming a dietitian a second or third career is that one, it's not too late to start over or do a new thing. I think I was 31 when I went back to grad school. So it's never too late to do the thing that you want to do. And if you finish doing the thing you thought you want to do and it doesn't work out, it's okay to do something else. And I mean, it's okay. Like there is not a right time frame or a right age that things are supposed to work out. Because the more I learn, even thank God that my parents are still living, but I even realize that they're ages that they're still figuring a lot of things out. So it's okay.
And isn't that lovely too, to want to evolve? I think, we focus a lot of times on, at least in for people I know, and sometimes my circles, where they have put in so many years with one particular company. They're just counting down the days until you can get out of there and get retired, which is fine because then maybe they want to pursue other things, but you don't have to wait until you're done with that. You can find little pockets of things to work on. Or like you said, there's maybe a creative outlet that you haven't pursued that you might be able to make some room for it in your calendar. Or if something really feels like it's grueling and it's sucking the energy or life out of you, then maybe now's the time to cut ties and allow for other opportunities to come your way. Because I agree with that. I don't think it's ever too late. I definitely think, because you were 31, you said, when you went back to
I'm
school.
like, I have to think those years just kind of blurred.
Yeah,
Yes, there you go.
I went back to school at 43. I think I was twice as old as everyone else in my class. But my point is, it's never too late, but there are definitely some accommodations you might need to make. Like you might be set in your ways, you might have responsibilities that, everybody, thank goodness for me, were able to chip in and kind of support me when I went back to school. So there might be certain things you have to take into place. And I want people to realize that just because we say things like it's never too late, but we recognize there might be accommodations you have to set up, or it might take you a little longer. So you might do something part-time instead of full-time while you're pursuing it. The point is, at the end of it all, when you're looking in the future of the direction that your decades are going, are you going to regret something, or are you going to be happy that you pursued it?
Yeah, most definitely. I love that. Thanks for adding that. I definitely love that
The
perspective.
warm and fuzzies. All right, my friends. So my two-part question, as I always end on these episodes, is what is on your plate today, Krystal? This is figurative and literal. So after we disconnect, what is the next thing that you're working on or doing in your personal or professional life? And then what's the next thing that you're going to be eating today?
Oh, I love that so much. So I knew the type of week. Let's talk about like the business stuff first. What's on my plate today? I have a few clients to be seen later today, and then my team and I are wrapping up a few side decks for some presentations that we have next week. One with a local organization that provides free doulas to expecting mothers from BIPOC backgrounds and communities, which great organization. And then what's on my plate, literally, because I knew the type of week I was going to have, I made a chili bake earlier this week. So I don't know if y'all have had a chili bake before, but it's just chili and then you put the cornbread on top and you bake it. And so it's kind of everything in one. So that's what's going to be on my plate today.
The one pan, the one pot meal. And Krystal, I always like when people answer this. This is why I also like to make sure the audience hears what we're saying. It doesn't have to be 37,000 ingredients. It doesn't have to be 4.5 hours in the kitchen. It could be something simple, one pot. And I also like how you said, I knew what the week looked like. That's also part of meal prep and meal planning. If you know you're going to have a busy week, don't overdo it. Allow yourself to have some accommodations there to make it easy and convenient, whether it's homemade, semi-homemade, takeout convenience foods. There's room for things like that in your life and in your
Yeah.
meal plan.
Yeah. And I, even when I wanted to get fancy with the chili, I told myself, no, just make it based on the package ingredients. And that's what we did.
And that's it. Don't be fancy indeed. Well, this has been such a pleasure, Krystal. I can't wait to continue seeing where you go, what direction you go in, and seeing more ongoing success for you. So I thank you so, so much for spending time with us today. And I wish you a wonderful rest of whatever, the week, the year, everything else that comes your way.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this time and space with me, Dina. It's been a joy.